Welcome back, basketball fans. Sorry if the graphics are so today. I just threw this together as I was watching NBA highlights on my sofa, and it's a video that I've been talking about to myself for a while to make, and so finally I just figured I'd just throw it out and do it. So here it is. Um, in sports history, if you're a hardcore sports fan like myself, you've seen plenty of icons that revolutionized the way their sports were seen, the attention they brought to their sports, the media attention they brought to their sports, and then, of course, the advertisement and money that because of them, what they were doing on the field, on the court, and just their image overall brought to the game and sometimes pushed it to whole new levels of icon status. So today we're looking at Caitlin Clark, who has really made a big statement in the last 2 years of women's college basketball. We've seen a lot of the back and forth with regards to women's sports players, whether it was WNBA or the American soccer team. A lot of people expecting to be treated and paid the same as men. My argument, and many other people throughout this whole sort of back and forth debate conversation, was that you get what you generate, right? It has nothing to do with sex. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, a man, black, white, Asian. That is all irrelevant. What matters is how much of an icon status you really are. Because if you are really an icon to your sport, the money, the endorsements, all of this stuff will start to come regardless. And just because you're a woman, it doesn't mean there's less opportunity. Truthfully, we have to remember that the majority of casual sports fans tend to be males. So with males, obviously they're watching sports that they've historically watched. So there are more eyes on men's sports because that's what we grew up watching. So for us to watch women's sports, generally, historically, a lot of that had to do with sexual appeal. You can look at people like Sharapova and others, Kornikova, two great tennis players, obviously Sharapova even more so. But these women really got a lot of attention because of their sexuality, right? And this is just a natural sort of thing. As a man, you're going to be attracted to beautiful women. So if there's beautiful women in sports, your eyes are obviously going to turn to them. That's why, women's beach volleyball was very popular, maybe more popular than men's beach volleyball, because men were primarily the people who watched it, and watching beautiful women play sports in bikinis obviously attracted people. And we've seen plenty of gimmicks and things of this nature to try to get people to pay attention. Obviously, back in the 60s, 70s, when you had roller skating sort of competition and the girls, were physical, attractive, that was trying to use sex appeal to get men and I suppose women to watch that sport, which obviously was very marginal and never became a TV sport to an extent of others, and didn't really have a long career. But then you even looked at female football, like NFL, and the girls were dressing very provocative. They were very attractive, but I can tell you, I've never actually seen a game. I've seen highlights. I've seen their uniforms and how they dressed. But outside of that, I wasn't really interested in watching the sport, even though the women were very attractive. And that's something that obviously appeals to the majority of men. When we talk about these kind of sports, that's not the only thing that's going to attract people. People want that iconic player, that person that people watch and are just blown away by what they're doing on the fields. And obviously, it's not about comparing men to women, because Caitlin Clark competes against women. So it's how dominant is she in her game? And if she is dominant, she's going to get eyes paying attention to her, right? Just the same way many of the icons listed in this video also did. So let's go through this and just take a deeper look. Let me sort of open that. Sorry. There we go. So my cover art, I just used a few. Oh, let me change something for a second. Sorry. Okay. So my cover art shows you Caitlin Clark obviously being compared to some of the greatest athletes in their sport, whether we're talking about Muhammad Ali, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, or Schumacher. You may not have been big fans of particular individuals here for whatever reason that may have been, but nonetheless, these guys were iconic. I also had Messi, but I don't know why he didn't end up on my cover art, but Messi is obviously in the conversation as well as Ronaldo, who both kind of, because of their competitiveness between one another, helped elevate themselves. You could see this with Caitlin Clark in her recent 2 years. The two events really that got the most attention was her back and forth with obviously Angel Reese, because there you have that Magic Johnson, Larry Bird sort of dynamic, which helps elevate both players to whole new levels. And those events, those two games obviously showed that people were interested, whether it's based on race or whatever it may be. It doesn't always have to do with race, but some people always want to talk about race. When you look at Ronaldo and Messi, who are in a similar situation, race is not an issue, right? One is Portuguese, one is Argentinian. There's not that much difference between them. But their competition elevated both of them. And obviously, we've seen this throughout sports. So let's just move through this and break it down. So Michael Jordan, the perfect example. Obviously, we know Bird and Magic really sort of brought new eyes to the NBA. And a lot of that became East Coast, West Coast. A lot of that became black and white. A lot of that became urban and country versus city type of thing, country mouse, city mouse. Michael Jordan took that to a whole new level where he was not political. He just went out and showed his determination to dominate the sport. And this was against iconic players like Bird and Magic, Dr. J, and many others. And his dominance is really what attracted people to him. When we saw him in North Carolina, people knew he was a great player and one of the best college players in the game. But he also came from a time where there was Patrick Ewing, and the year before Clyde Drexler and Akeem Olajuwon. There was a ton of elite college basketball players going into the NBA. So it would have been easy for him to potentially fall behind those players. But he elevated himself above them and became the icon of basketball today. His shoes, the marketability behind that, the championships, the whole combination has really elevated Michael Jordan to a whole new level, never seen before, where the NBA became not just an American sport, but a global sport. And now, years and years later, we see the result of that. Obviously, tons of the top players in the NBA right now are not American. They're European, African, and obviously the inspiration that these people got from Michael Jordan moved them to where they are now, and obviously helped fulfill the NBA to sort of a whole new level as far as a global sport. And that's thanks to the icon that was Michael Jordan. Then you get to Ali Boumaier. Ali, also had huge rivalries. As you look here, Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier was a huge icon in his own right. And thanks to the competition between the two of them, Ali, Joe Frazier, it elevated both of them. Foreman as well, Sonny Liston. If Ali didn't have these kind of opponents, he probably never would have reached the status where he was. He was the biggest, most influential, most recognized sporting figure in the world. And people may scratch their head in modern day sports and not really understand the magnitude and the significance of this. This was well before social media. You can only imagine how much of an icon he would have been in this present era. It would be off the charts. His fight with George Foreman in Africa, the Rumble in the Jungle, Ali Boumaier, right? Him going in with a killer, a guy who knocked Joe Frazier out, beat him from corner to corner, pillar to post, ragdolled him. People really thought he was going to kill Ali, really. And This helped elevate this fight to levels we've never seen in modern boxing. Boxing at this time was primarily the number one sport globally in the world. This fight between Ali and Foreman, I think the report was 1 billion people globally watched that fight. 1 billion people. 1 billion people globally. And this was when the world was far less connected compared to today, right? Where I could watch any live event right here on my phone. And I can take my phone to the mountains, to the sea. I could take it anywhere I want, and I could still watch that event without being impeded. Back in this time, you need to be close to your TV, and the network had to be showing it. Otherwise, you'd be shit out of luck. Ali was an icon, and obviously the fighter that got me interested in boxing to begin with. If you're a boxing fan, you can check out my other channel, Sean on Boxing. I would love to have you join our community. So let's move through. Then we get to Schumacher. I've never been a huge F1 person, a fan. I'm not European. I know Europeans generally are huge F1 fans, far more than North Americans. In North America, we had our own sort of race car sort of things, and a lot of that obviously far more American than from Canada. But what I do know is the icon that Schumacher was, the dominance him and Ferrari had during his era. So much so that me, somebody who didn't even pay attention to the sport, was well versed on Schumacher and how dominant he was during his time. Obviously, since then, lots of other great riders or drivers have come through, thanks to Schumacher, thanks to the eyes, the way he made the sport global, and the attention he brought to the sport. Of course, drivers today are benefiting because of that, right? Hence the whole icon label. This was a guy that was so dominant that he retired from F1 to start racing motorcycles, right? Just to have a new challenge, to do something where there would be competition. Now he'd be putting himself into an uncomfortable situation against people that were far more experienced than him. And he would have to adapt and adjust and try to learn how to dominate that sport. Obviously, he was a huge skier as well. And unfortunately, that's what led to his current health issues. Unfortunately for him, I think he's still in a coma, if I'm not mistaken, and it's been years. So obviously it's a tragic ending for an iconic athlete like Schumacher, but it's good that we still remember him and think about the great things he brought to the sport. That's why I wanted to make sure that I did include him, because you hate to think of somebody as dominant as him being forgotten. And so, hats off to Schumacher, who was truly an icon in car racing. Then we get to my favorite footballer of all time, Lionel Messi, who you can see the icon status of Lionel Messi, who just moved to North America, to the Miami team that obviously is owned by another icon in David Beckham. The eyes, the attention, the media that have followed Messi to North America. And hopefully with this, the revolution it's going to bring to American football. So American football continues to progress. America is obviously a huge country with tons of athletic individuals. We know there's tons of immigrants in America. And historically, immigrants, a lot of them, the number one sport that they played as kids and they did follow was football, or soccer, as you like to say in the States. When you have an iconic figure like Messi going to the States, this can only help bring more money into the sport, obviously get younger kids to start participating. And because of that, obviously a very big growth in skill set development, and down the line, potentially seeing the US as a real threat in the World Cup, right? Obviously, at this point, it may be a little premature, but they have been developing obviously for years and years and years. But to take over a sport is not something that happens overnight. Congratulations to Messi. He became World Cup winner this year or last year with Argentina. So I was very happy in one of the most iconic matches in history against France. If you haven't seen that game, I don't know if it would still have the same sort of feeling to it, but all I know is I was watching in Taiwan, full of a bar of people, and the back and forth, the ebbs and flows. It was like no other football match I've ever seen. It was ridiculous, ridiculous. But, congratulations to Messi. That was the final cherry on top of his career. And now moving to the States, he's going to help bring the sport to America at a whole nother level as far as media, endorsements, and hopefully development. That's what you do when you're an icon. You change the sport. You revolutionize it. You bring it to a whole new group of fans or participants that never really thought about it before. Then we get to, of course, an icon that I watched growing up, which was Wayne Gretzky. I was never a huge Edmonton fan or a Wayne Gretzky fan, but you could not be a hockey fan and not understand the dominance that Wayne Gretzky had. The things he did were unreal. So much so that one of the biggest, deepest pocket teams in the US, Los Angeles, ended up buying out his contract from Edmonton to bring him to the States, to bring him to a bigger market, to do what? Try to bring hockey to a whole new level. And at that time, it did happen. Unfortunately, a lot of that has dropped off over the years, even though the NHL is still full of fantastic players. But a lot of times, stories are what matters. When Gretzky moved over, it was giant. Nobody could imagine the best player, the most dominant hockey player in the sport, possibly in history, leaving the franchise where he won Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup, leaving to go play in the US team, where a lot of Canadians felt that Americans didn't even really care about hockey that much. So you're bringing him to a Los Angeles media market, which was good for his wife, who wanted to be an actress. But as far as the sport, how much fans would it really attract? And of course, people went there for the show to see Gretzky, just like people go to Miami and go to their matches to see Messi. Then from there, he ended up going to New York, and that just galvanized things even more because New York, Los Angeles, the two biggest media markets in the United States, and Gretzky obviously was representing teams on both of those coasts. So for the NHL, you could see what they were doing. They were using the icon of the NHL to try to build up the game and push it to levels that it had never been at before. And at certain points, they did that. I'm not sure if it's continued to roll over, unfortunately, but obviously Gretzky did his part and has been and still is an icon. Now we get to Caitlin Clark, who has brought media attention and scoring numbers and just casual sports fans' eyes to a sport that 2, 3, 4 years ago, the majority of people wouldn't even have been paying attention to. I've been doing March Madness brackets for over 40 years. And I can honestly tell you, this was the only year that I've actually really paid attention to the women's bracket. Prior to that, I didn't really care. I wasn't very interested. And it's not that the game was bad or uninteresting and it didn't have stars, because that's not true. I have known players from NCAA, going back to as far as Cheryl Miller, who I saw from some of her games. I watched her in the Olympics represent the U.S. with her and the McGee sisters. So, I did pay attention. I watched the first season or two of the WNBA when you had Cheryl Swoops and Lisa Leslie and the other stalwarts that helped open up the league. But like many times, if you don't have a consistent push from media, from marketing, you don't have that iconic star to grab casual fans' attention, then things are just going to reach a peak and eventually drop down. And that's what's happened to the WNBA. Now the hopes really are that Caitlin Clark is going to bring those eyes that watched her in college to the WNBA, which really, as a WNBA player, you should be super excited about this, because potentially this is bringing money, eyes, notoriety to the game. And potentially because of this, women will start being paid much more than they are now. I was just watching a YouTube video earlier where I think the highest paid woman in the WNBA makes less than $300,000 a year. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'd love to make $300,000 a year. You walk away after taxes, you're clearing 150, maybe a little more depending on your accountant and things you're writing off. But, great money, right? Money where you could definitely live a very, very, very comfortable lifestyle. But compared to NBA players, it's microscopic, right? Microscopic. I mean, Caitlin Clark as a college player makes more money than those WNBA players because of that new deal that they have in college basketball, in college sports. So if she brings a lot of this attention to the league, it's great for the league. It's great for the women that participate in the league. And I think people really should get behind her and start supporting that, because in the end, it's only going to benefit everybody, right? As we said, to be an icon has nothing to do with sexuality, right? Whether it's a man, woman, or whatever. The point is marketability and the fact that people are drawn to you. You look at Ronda Rousey as an example. Ronda Rousey was in a sport that's predominantly dominated by men in the MMA. And when she was on top of her game, she was the number one selling athlete in the MMA, the number one. She was headlining cards. She was getting paid more than every single man that was part of that MMA group. What's it called? I can't think of the name. You know who I mean. But like literally, she was the king until obviously Conor McGregor came around. And there was great athletes before her, John Jones and many others. But she, based on the attention that she brought to the sport, was paid based on what she brought to the sport. She got paid more because more people watched her than the men. And this is no different to any other sport, right? You get paid what you earn, what you bring. And so for all these women and people that are presently hating on Caitlin Clark, they should remember that, because she's bringing something to the WNBA and college that Stephen Curry brought to the NBA. That gunslinger, shooting threes from all over. Doesn't matter what time, what part of the clock it is. It just becomes ridiculous at times. I just watched Golden State lose to the Pelicans, the highlights. And the Pelicans, the game has changed so much in NBA. The Pelicans beat Golden State at their own game, right? You had literally dudes, Trey Murphy, right, on New Orleans, shooting threes from miles back, whether that's because there was no room to get closer, so he had to take what was available to him. The point is, that's something that you would never have seen historically, because you'd be benched if you were firing three-pointers from that deep and that early in a clock. That's what Caitlin Clark brings to the game, so that, people love watching dunks, highlight plays, exciting block shots, and these kind of aerial things. I mean, I grew up loving Dr. J because of these reasons, right? Reading about Connie Hawkins and what all his friends and them were doing in New York City during the 70s. And so as a kid, that's what I wanted to be. Obviously, as a 5'10 kid in Toronto, it wasn't going to be easy for me to actually do that. But obviously, a lot of effort and energy went into doing that. And had some success. But at the same time, this style relates to everybody. Everyone can shoot a basketball. You don't need to be 6 foot tall. You don't need to be 7 foot tall. You don't need to be a boy, a girl, whatever. Everybody can do it, right? And because of this, it really brings a whole new subgroup to the sport, because people love the excitement, the gunslinger mentality, right? The Maravich mentality. People loved Maravich because of that. The wicked pass, the shooting, the exciting plays. I still remember the first time I really saw Isaiah Thomas, and he did this under the arm layup thing. And it's not hard. As a kid growing up, I did that a lot playing as well. But when you see it in the context of an NBA game, and he does it to throw off the defender, and it was so smooth, I was just like, damn, that shit's unbelievable. What's his face? Jason Williams behind the back off the elbow pass. I mean, these kind of plays get crowds going, get crowds jazzed up just as much as a dunk over somebody. And don't get me wrong, nothing I like more than watching somebody get dunked on. As a kid, that's iconic what we watch consistently. But I'm watching the NCAA women's game not because of dunks. Nobody's going to dunk. No one's getting iconic block shots. I'm watching because this woman is a gunslinger, and it's ridiculous. And I've never seen any of these great women college players, Holtzclaw or any of the others, do what she's doing, right? I like Taurasi because she had a little bit of that in her, right? Brianna Stewart, I didn't really watch her play too much, but Holtzclaw I did. And obviously, what's her face? How come I never can remember her name? Beautiful girl that's on NBA with Shaq and Charles, but also like a great player, but also beautiful woman as well. So, more eyes obviously attracted to her because of that. Now you look at her, and I don't think Caitlin Clark's an attractive woman. I don't watch her because of her sex appeal. There's other women that are playing in college basketball and the league that I find far more attractive than her. But she's the one I'm most interested in watching because of the style of her game. Very reminiscent, of course, to Steph Curry, who is my favorite team in NBA right now. Is Golden State. Why? Because of Curry, the way they play, the gunslinger mentality. When he gets hot, that shit is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And for Clark, it's similar, right? We've never seen a woman do what she's doing. And I'm not saying there weren't better all-around players or better players in the sport, but none of them did what she's doing. Like I'm just watching right now.
You block out everything. You don't see no defenders, and you just start shooting, and
Juju Watkins is on Paul George's show, so I was watching that just now before I did my live. Good numbers, Paul. 127,000 people. Give me a shout out, buddy. But needless to say, my favorite player is Juju Watkins. She's so smooth, the way she moves from the court, never looking rushed, gets to her spot, smooth pull-up jump shots. Man, she's buttery, right? But she ain't doing what Caitlin Clark was doing. She may do that, and she may surpass that over the next 3 years of her college eligibility. And I'm excited to watch her do that and see if she can become that Michael Jordan of female basketball. Not that I expect her to be dunking or anything like that. We've seen women that could dunk, like what's her face, the big tall girl from Baylor that's got imprisoned in Russia. But she was not an interesting player to watch outside of her throwing down a two-hand dunk, which was impressive. But when you're 6'7", you should be able to do that, right? Literally, she is 9 inches taller than I am, with a reach probably 12 inches, a whole foot longer than my own. I mean, if I would have had those advantages when I played high school basketball, I would have literally been dunking on fucking everybody. Everybody. It would have been ridiculous. But she has it, and she brought it to the league, and it's a nice addition to the league. But no one's tuning in to watch maybe she's going to get a dunk in a game. And outside of that, she's just going to use her physicality on the inside to shoot over smaller opponents, right? It was kind of like watching South Carolina beat Caitlin Clark this year with their low post player who literally was 5 inches taller than everybody else on the floor. Great player, soft hands, really solid inside moves. But it's not interesting. Like I grew up watching Shaquille O'Neal, and I remember him in LSU. People liked watching Chris Jackson. because he was exciting. Obviously, Stanley Robertson and Shaq were dominant, but the most exciting aspect of the game of watching LSU play outside of Shaq getting a huge block or dunking on somebody's head was mostly what Chris Jackson was doing, right? Playing like this, gunslinging, right? That was super exciting. Shaq went into the NBA and was on LA, a dominant team, but I liked Kobe, sort of like Juju, right? Much more of a gunslinger, a more smooth, interesting player to watch. Shaq was dominant, but it's not that interesting to watch a guy just pound the ball down low and dunk on guys, right? There's far less skill necessary to do that. Whereas what Caitlin Clark's doing, those great passes to set up her teammates who are not great players. I'm not saying they're bad players, but when you compare her team to a team like South Carolina or UConn, they don't have the All-American high school basketball players that those teams have. They're just not as good in the long run. But she made them better. She made her team better. And that's really what makes her iconic to female NCAA college basketball. That, and of course, breaking the scoring records and doing a lot of other fantastic things, breaking records in her career. But obviously, with good things, you get negatives, like Sheryl Swoopes. I love Sheryl Swoopes when she played at Texas Tech and then went to the WNBA. She's not as smooth as Juju, but at her time, she was Juju, right? Juju is comparable to her, the way they play, their size. They're tall, but not dominant physical athletes. A lot of theirs was having good size, athleticism, and great skill, allowing them to get their shots off and be great contributors to their teams. Sheryl Swoopes was excellent. She was my favorite WNBA player. But now when I look at this, her shirt tells you everything you need to know. Female, fearless, and black. It's good that she's a proud black woman, but you're literally wearing this shirt on a day you're going to be talking about Caitlin Clark. And then what do? You go in on Caitlin Clark, throwing out things that aren't true, not factual, to discredit her and bring her down because she's not black. If she was black, I guarantee you, Sheryl Swoopes would not have been saying what she was saying. She would have been parading Caitlin Clark as the future superstar savior of the WNBA. I guarantee it, 100%. She was saying these things not because of what she was doing, but because who she is, right? And that's the unfortunate aspect to this. A lot of the hate and criticism Clark gets is because of her skin color. The same way Doncic and the Joker get a lot of criticism in the NBA. Not because they're not dominant, they're great. You may not like their style because it's not high flying. I get that. I get that a lot. I loved UNLV, Michigan, high flying, exciting squads when I grew up as a kid. But you still got to appreciate dominant, skilled players, right? And as I said, what Sheryl Swoopes and her ladies tried to do, start the WNBA and become icons to help this league become successful, has fallen off. And Caitlin Clark is coming in, and she may be the perfect individual to rejuvenate that and help every woman who participates or is a part of the WNBA, thus helping college basketball, because now girls that play in the NCAA and high school now really have true icons and a direction where they can really see themselves moving, which really pays them huge money and gives them all the benefits that you would hope a star athlete would get, right? We look at some of these stats that she put up. Let's just go to the full screen so I can see it a little better. Sorry, it's a little blurry, but Caitlin Clark's college career: 2-time AP Player of the Year, 3-time Big Ten Player of the Year, 2-time Naismith Player of the Year, most career points in NCAA basketball or tournament history. And I know there's what's her face, the old Kansas female player, and her numbers for some reason. There's some controversy about all of that. But Ohio's, Iowa and Caitlin Clark and that whole franchise showed her tons of respect. Woodard, bringing her to the game when they knew Clark was going to break her record, right? You know, that's classy. It's giving a woman that at this point probably is unknown by the majority of casual fans. And even people who watch college basketball probably aren't really familiar with her because it was a long time ago where she did play. And they're giving her her you know, her flowers. And then to come out and literally criticize Caitlin Clark because she uses a different ball and the 3-point range type of argument. Whereas you can't complain to players because the game has evolved and changed. It has nothing to do with the people participating. This is what happens in sports. Tiger Woods, when he came into the sport, they started lengthening and narrowing golf courses because he was so dominant off the tee. They wanted to make it more of a level playing field and not allow his dominant drives and his length to supersede his competition. So what they did is they made it so long drives weren't the way you're going to win. You had to be more precise, and only being really precise with precision shots was going to allow you to win major after major. And what did he do? He adjusted, he adapted, and he went on to do exactly that until, of course, it all blew up in his face. She is the NCAA Women's Hoops all-time leading scorer, and that's fucking great. Fantastic. And the people that want to make this about race, I mean, the record she broke was another white woman, right? What's her face? Who plays in the WNBA now? Come on, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But like literally, it's not a race thing because it's not like she's breaking a black woman's record. Kelsey Plum, she's broke Kelsey Plum's record, another white girl who obviously broke Lynette Woodard's record and was the leading NCAA college basketball leader. And not just that, but right now, and this doesn't list on this stat, she broke the NCAA basketball all-time leading scorer, men's and women's, passing what's his face from LSU. So she is the highest scoring basketball player in NCAA history, men or women. And that is iconic. So here's another thing which I find interesting. This shows you already the Caitlin Clark effect in the WNBA. We already know she's going to be the #1 draft pick and go to Indiana, which is fitting. She's being compared to Larry Bird, even though she's obviously more like Steph Curry, but going to Indiana, where Bird was from, who obviously went back and coached Indiana, had iconic time there as well. We know she's going to be the #1 pick. But now here, the Aces, who are the WNBA champions, who usually play at the Michelob Ultra Arena at Mandalay Bay, which is a 12,000-seat complex. But the team's July 2nd game against the Fever, Indiana Fever, who's going to draft Caitlin Clark #1, will be held at the T-Mobile Arena, which can hold up to 18,000 fans. CBS News said, interesting seeing Caitlin Clark yourself, right? So this shows you, they know the impact Caitlin Clark is going to have in the WNBA. So the first thing they want to do is go to an arena that can hold more people so they can sell more ticket and create more revenue. And that's thanks to Caitlin Clark, who literally hasn't played one game in the WNBA yet. But already teams are adjusting their venue to try to hold larger audiences, knowing that she's going to bring far more attention to the league, which is win, 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 and win for everyone involved. So will Clark save the WNBA? Is she going to revolutionize the sport the way the other athletes I mentioned in today's video did? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. My dog is dreaming. But let me know in the comment section below what you think. Chasing rabbits. But thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate it. And I will see you next time. Peace out. We're going to be talking obviously about the NBA playoffs that are coming up soon. Obviously, we're just figuring out what the seedings are going to be. Everyone is trying to maneuver into the best position and the best matchups. So we'll be talking about all that soon. Jump on in, enjoy, participate. Thanks for watching.